fellow 2 years ago in 2010 with a project called Look to Learn, which I'll tell you a little bit more about shortly when I do my stuff. But what I'd love to hear from you is I'd love to hear names and like maybe where geographically you come from, because that kind of is interesting. I was also, some of you, in fact probably all of you, I was also on the steering committee. So well done for being here. So I'll know your name, and I'll actually probably, if you know, it'll trigger a memory. I'll probably remember what you're doing, but it's quite a long time ago actually. So if you can do your usual, let's hear where you're up to with your elevator pitches, and then I'll do my spiel. And I want you to ask me. I want this session to be really useful for you. Having been in your position, I know that there are questions. What I want to focus on today is what happens after present tense, because it's one of those things that you work the next, these weeks you're working to launch night, and then you're like let out into the big wide world, so to speak, if you're not already. And I want to tell you a little bit about where I went straight after the fellowship and what happened after the fellowship, but then ask me questions about how I've done stuff. So do you want to start over here? Yeah, start.
My name is Justin Sakoffs, currently from Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm here with something called Magnetic Shoal, which is I'm here with a venture called Magnetic Shoal.
Magnetic Shoal. Okay.
Which is a children's toy to engage them better into the world of Tefillah in synagogue.
Okay, very cool.
Hi, my name is Melissa Goldfinger. I'm from Argentina, and my venture is to bring energy here, that it's God's therapy for people with special needs.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm from Michigan, and I want to start a traveling arts fellowship to inspire Jewish artists.
My name is Tommy Buchler from Budapest, Hungary, and my project is basically it's called Minyanim Young Urban Communities, and it's a network for young Jewish professionals and semi-professionals.
Hi, good morning. My name is Adi. I'm from Jerusalem, and my venture is to create a platform to engage both Olim and professional Israelis to promote ideas that they bring from their own countries.
Hi, I'm Cynthia, and my venture is bringing people from around the world with transferable business skills to come bring them to Israel to teach to pluralistic Israeli communities. Classrooms.
My name is David Hiddestan. I'm from London, England. My venture is an online magazine which seeks to be more diverse and inclusive of the wide range of voices in the British Jewish community.
God, you've worked on that. We work in the same office space.
My name is Daniel Jacobs, and my venture is to help explain data from places like the World Bank using educational gaming.
I'm married to a gay man, so.
Oh, great.
And I'm in education. There we go.
My name is Jana. I'm from St. Petersburg, and my venture is a web portal Idea Factory. It's a platform to facilitate realization of projects. So I'll provide a platform to form the team, effective tools, methods, approach, and also a group of mentors, coaches, and facilitators to help them realize it fast and with a good quality.
My name is Tobias. I'm from Long Island, New York. And my venture is a production company that would deal with Jewish narratives, meaningful Jewish narratives.
Okay, so Look to Learn, I'll tell you what it was, I'll tell you what it is today, because I think that gives you an idea of where I am, and I'll stand up in a second. So Look to Learn, as was a museum education program combining biblical text and secular studies through museum art. When I was here 2 years ago, it was literally tours. That's what it was. I ran tours of museums. At that point, I was only running it in 2 museums in London. I was running it at the National Gallery, and I was running it at the British Museum, and it was taking 2 areas of the curriculum and fusing it together. Okay, so that was basically what it is. What it is today is something slightly different. So Brian, lovely Brian, have you met Brian?
The intern?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He created that.
Aw.
Okay, so that was his, and even though you're going to meet Elliot in a week or so's time, who also works in the J Hub in London, and he's going to be your graphic designer. So he's put all my stuff together, but we've kept Brian's logo. And I'm actually meeting Brian after this, so I want to, when you see him, you can say, Nick, start using it. So what it is today, Look to Learn today is much more than just a product-based program. It's a platform. It's an educational platform combining integration, and it's composed of 4 major elements. One is the fact that I still run these museum-based education experiences. I run teacher training seminars to train teachers to use integrated education. I write specialised curriculum and I deliver it to synagogues, to schools, to communal bodies and so forth. And then I do interfaith education, so taking faith education schools and working together in twinning opportunities. It's much bigger and broader, and it's a platform, it's not a product anymore. It's about methodology, it's about a philosophy, it's about a way of thinking. 2 years ago, I was working with 1 school in 2 museums. 2 years later, I'm working with 14 schools on 8 different programs. I'm working both nationally, and I've just got my first, I've worked a little bit internationally. I was in Moscow the October after PT, and I'm going to Munich in January, but I work both outside of London now as well. So I'm working in London with a lot of the Jewish day schools there, and I'm working in Leeds, Manchester and Glasgow. So I've really expanded up into the outer areas, and I'm working with museums there as well. And in fact, yesterday I had meetings with Migdal David and the Israel Museum about collaboration projects between England and Israel. So what is what I do, and what is it about? And how did I focus? Because I know you're doing environmental scanning, and what I did when I looked at it, I wanted to look at all the different areas of education that are provided, what's out there, what is going on that is currently being offered to schools and currently being offered to communal bodies, and what is missing. And that's what the environmental scan really gave me. I noticed that there was one area that really wasn't there, and that was really fusing education together, bringing 2 things that are taught separately. In all of where you're from, there are Jewish schools, right? In most major Jewish centres, there's somebody providing Jewish education. What I'm talking about here is the fact that education is taught in two components, right? You have a secular studies or a general studies track, you have a Jewish studies track. How many opportunities are being offered to bring those things together? And yet here we are as, quite focused Jewish identity position people. Hi. Here you are rounded Jewish individuals, and you make everyday connections, and yet that's not really readily taught in a school situation. So what I was trying to do was really create opportunities to make meaningful connections. And when I go out and I pitch to schools, they get the idea that it's a meaningful connection. I'll give you an example. One of my most successful programs is that I run a pre-Pesach, doesn't always have to be pre-Pesach, I ran it last week with a school, workshop centered around ancient Egypt and Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim, the exodus of Egypt, right? The story, our narrative. Did you still have the narrative of the promised land and right? So that whole narrative, right? But I'm putting it into an ancient historical context. And that, I would love you to introduce yourself in 2 seconds. And what I do with that is I show kids ancient Egyptian mummies and artifacts related to life on the Nile, and we look at the biblical text, all to do with the Exodus, right? The mummification of Jacob and Joseph and so forth. So meaningful connections. And the reason I do that, and I know this because I taught in the States, that ancient Egypt becomes part of many curriculums in schools, right? It's part of the British curriculum. I know I've taught it in the States, and it's part of what's taught. Ancient civilizations are taught to kids, right? So here is a way of bringing what is regularly in the curriculum and something that is really the undercore of our narrative and bringing them together. So that they're really meaningful connections. The other thing I want to do is, hands up, how many of you, if you think about your primary school, your elementary schooling, your elementary schooling, how many of you can remember a field trip or an outing? Anywhere. Anywhere you went to? Where did you go to? What do you remember?
We went to the farm.
You went to a farm, right?
Yeah, me too.
You went to a farm?
Science museum.
Science museum.
I can't recall anything. I think once we saw some sort of archaeological site sort of thing.
Okay, it could be, by the way, it could be the park, right? It doesn't. What I'm talking about is what do you remember in your schooling which didn't take place inside the classroom, right? Something that took place outside the classroom, right? Did you?
Playing in the backyard.
Right. Okay. So outside of your classroom, hanging out. Okay.
We took a field trip for Pardes.
Right. Okay. Great.
Imperial War Museum.
Imperial War Museum.
The Arboretum.
Okay. The Arboretum.
Natural History Museum.
Natural History Museum.
We went to one of those places where they act out of pioneer life.
Right. Okay. So, right, taking that consideration, hands up if you remember a math lesson or a science lesson, right? You did hundreds of those. We learn and we remember experiences, right? That is what is when you're young, that's what it's all about. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to create an opportunity where you learn from real life objects, you learn through those experiences, right? Those are things, 20, 15, 20, 30 years later you remember, right? And I wanted to bring Jewish life and Jewish education in an innovative way. I wanted to make it into something that is unique, innovative, different. I'm standing right in the middle of it, and of course I wanted to make it fun. And you can probably guess, this is how I would, when I present, I try and use lots of energy. I try and make it really interactive, and we have great fun with the kids. So I just wanted to give you an outline. And I said to you, when I was here, I was working in one school, and that was because I was still teaching. I was still an elementary school teacher. I gave that up 4 months after I finished present tense. I finished present tense in the July. I then taught, actually a little bit longer. I gave in my notice in January and I left at Pesach. That's how but I decided basically it took me from September to December. I was like really trying to juggle everything, and I was like, you know what, if I don't give this a go, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. I've just got to take the risk. I'm going to take the plunge, I'm going to give in my notice, and I'm going to leave teaching. So going from one school to two, this is just what I do with schools. So this is just my school program. I also run this now for family education. I'm running it for communities, synagogues. I'm writing curriculum. Okay, so I just want to give you the upscale of what can happen, right? What potential there is when you leave this place. What this does for you and springboards you to. So I'm working with, there's a little bit of terminology here which is very British, so I'll go through it. EYFS is preschool, early years foundation stage. It's under 5, so it's anything from like nursery, preschool, GAN, like 2-year-olds to 5-year-olds. Key stage 1 is 5 to 7-year-olds. Key stage 3 is 11 to 13, 14-year-olds. Key stage 2 is 7 to 11-year-olds. So it's, what I do now is I'm working with the really young, and I'm working all the way up. Key stage 4 is like people. It's before Bagrut or pre-SAT, right? It's like SATs. It's like 14 to 16-year-olds thereabouts. And you can see like the variety of subjects I'm working on. I'm working anything from art, which is my background and is my passion, all the way through to science and religion, right? And I'm really upscaling, going from the really little, which is really experiential, is really kind of learning through play, all the way through to dealing with quite difficult concepts in a museum, fitting at the Natural History Museum, looking at Breshit and Age of the Universe and how evolution and Judaism can be brought together and understood. So I just want to kind of go through that. I want to show you some photos and some other things, and just this is how it looked beforehand. This hasn't changed, okay? So there's some things that have changed in what I do. There's some things that haven't changed in what I do. So I still run. I had this set up. I had this. That hadn't changed. This was what I was still doing 2 years ago. I was doing a 3-part program. I was selling it. By the way, I am not a charity. I do this as a non-profit business. It's what's known as a social enterprise in the UK. I have a revenue stream, and that revenue stream then goes back into the business, and I pay myself a small dividend, and then I buy everything else off of my business. But it is a revenue stream. I don't take any grant funding, and if I wanted grant funding, what I could do is I can have projects funded. So I could have a charitable organisation apply for funding for a school or an organisation to partake in a Look to Learn experience. So I wanted to just kind of give you an idea of some of the things the kids have produced, some of the pieces the kids have looked at. So remember I just said to you about ancient Egypt, so the part programs, we always look at biblical text, we always look at whether it's Tanakh text, Jewish themes, Jewish values. We then always go to an art museum. There are some schools that based on sort of their either religious orientation or geographical status, we might not go to a museum just because of logistical reasons or for whatever reason. So I bring the artwork to the group and through using an interactive whiteboard or a projector. And then the third component is the kids always create something. And if I can, I do this with families as well. So the kids make mummies. They make small little mummies as a way of reflecting the entire education process. You can see what they've done here. This is ancient Egypt. This was related to, it can be related to a couple of things. It's either to Shvat or it's the Shivat HaMinim. It's the 7 species of the land of Israel. So what we do is this is a 16th century Italian portraitist who uses vegetables and fruits to make faces. So you can see the relationship. The kids have actually recreated it. And we did a whole experience in trying to then recreate their own art using brachot as well. I've done it with brachot, the difference between Boikri Ha'etz and Boikri Ha'adamah and so forth. And then this one was the students were creating, taking a Rembrandt painting from a biblical text about Belshazzar's feast from the book of Daniel, and then the kids create a piece of artwork. And I've done this with adults. In fact, I did this with my PT group because I wanted them to actually kind of go through the experience so they really understood what I was doing and try it out. So there were some hands around. My guess is they didn't move to the new office. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I wanted to kind of give you what I do and where I come to. What I'm working on at the moment and things that in terms of educational material as well that I provide for families. I do family tours. I've actually got one this coming Sunday on Joseph. And I'm doing a lot of networking. I do a lot of networking. I spend a lot of time, a lot of effort meeting people. The reason why I came to Israel was that I was at a conference that started on Sunday, which I couldn't make because I had to get here, but it was Monday and Tuesday, and it was the World Conference for Jewish Communal Professionals. Now, hand on my heart, I was the fry in this massive pool. There was like Jewish agency people, there was board of deputies, which was like, the bigwigs of the Jewish community in England, there was big charities, and then there was me. And I was like sitting there going, okay, I feel a little bit out of what am I doing here? But the reason why I was there was because it was amazing networking opportunities, and in fact, it was very naughty, and I completely bunked Monday afternoon's activities. I was supposed to go to see Alin Hospital and talk about cultural competency, about how they integrate all the different populations, and I didn't go. And it's really interesting. The reason I didn't go is because there's a guy called Sean Landris. Have you heard of Sean Landris? Right, he's the director of an American company who does sort of very similar kind of present tense sort of stuff. What you'll realise when you leave this is there's like this whole, if you haven't already, there's like this whole innovation genre of people who are worldwide, and you kind of tap in. It's like the ROI lot and the PT lot, and then there's Jumpstart, and then there's Paideia, and they're all sort of, various geographical things. Anyway, Sean was in town, and he was going to feature me as the case study about impact investment. So we decided we would hang out. What I didn't realise was the two other people were hanging out. One was the director of the JCCY in Brooklyn, great contact, right? Spent the whole afternoon chatting to him. And the other one was the director of the Jewish Education Project, in the US, who basically is a person who runs Jewish education. Yeah.
How do you go about following up with these people?
Okay, so I'm going to take all the questions, and we'll do in 2 seconds, once I finish, I literally will take everything and I'll talk about how I did it. So, there I was, I made this choice to not go to something that I didn't think was relevant. I kind of knew that Sean would hang out with those kind of people, and I spent the most amazing afternoon talking to them about, And 2 years later, I spent yesterday with 2 contacts that I made when I was here 2 years ago. One is the Director of Education at the Israel Museum, and the other one was the Director of Education from Migdal David. So kind of like keeping tabs on them. And now I'm traveling as well and keeping tabs and stuff. So that's me in a nutshell. You know what I do, you know what my venture is. It's not a venture anymore, it's a business. I wouldn't say that I'm living on what I make. You know, I don't want to be... Is there air conditioning on? It just feels really warm in here. Yeah. Is it on? It is on?
It's on.
It's on. It's on 23 though.
21?
Yeah, perfect. And maybe it might also be this, that I'm being like bombarded.
I know, it's not a great, because it gets really cold here, but then that side of the room stays really hot, so.
Oh, okay, fine. I'll just come and stand in that corner.
No, I turned it down.
Thank you.
So she shouldn't stand in the corner.
Yeah. So, you know, what I want you to do now is I want you to quiz me. So the first question, actually I'll tell you what I'm going to do now, is I will turn this off so we can reduce some of the ambient additional heat. If you want to grab me a chair, and I will move this back. Ooh, sorry, dodgy turtle. I'll move this back, and I want you to literally fire whatever you want at me. Fire the questions. What's troubling you? How are you going with, like, how are you coping? It sounds a bit ridiculous, but I remember when I did this. I should preface this for anybody who's in a similar situation. We relocated here. I'm married with 2 small children. At the time, I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. We house swapped, so we live in London in a house. My husband was a freelancer, so he worked in London hours. We relocated here. We lived in Arnona. We were living for 2 months in Arnona, and we just took our life and moved to Jerusalem. I would do this crazy run up. At that time, they were still on Emek. I'd do this crazy run up the hill to Arnona to say goodnight to my kids, to come back down at 8 o'clock for your evening sessions, and then get up in the morning and sort my kids out at daycare and gun, and then come. I was doing this kind of crazy juggling. So anybody who's doing similar stuff, I completely empathize with you. It's worth it. From my perspective, I didn't realize as well the impact that PT would have for me until probably about 6 months afterwards. It wasn't until I went solo that I could stand up and I could do my elevator pitch and I could talk to people, I could network with anybody, and I could, decided to make these bags. I went to a conference where there was 250 educators from all the different schools in England, and I decided that was going to be my business card. Right? Because people lose business cards, they didn't have bags.
Nice.
I made the bags.
That's great.
And I would basically walk up to somebody and I'd say, what school are you from? How do you integrate your Jewish education in your school? And they'd go, we don't. I was like, well, I'm going to give you 30 seconds of my time, and in response, I'm going to give you a bag to put all your stuff for the conference in. Right? But at the end of the day, I had 250 people walking around with look-to-learn bags. It was just, it was just thinking slightly out of the box of how to do it. And now I'm on my second. I bring the bags with me wherever I go, and the deal is I get to pitch to you, and you get a bag in response.
Mm-hmm.
But launch night. Think outside the box. Everybody's going to have a business card. What is it? You said about keeping going.
How do you? Yeah.
Right?
What's your follow-up method?
Okay, so what's my follow-up method? So for a conference like this, it's interesting. I made a real screw up, okay? Last week, I was working with 2 schools. I was completely crazy, and I was flying out on Sunday morning, really early. I left my business cards in my office. I'm like, shit, what can I do? I'm coming to this conference, I'm going to meet loads of people, and my business cards are in London. Motzei Shabbat, I'm texting various people in my office going, do you have office keys? Can I get there? It's 11:30 at night. Can I get there at 7 in the morning to open the office? And I'm like, hold on. This is crazy. The first thing I did was I was like, okay, fine, what am I going to do? I don't have business cards. I've only got 8 bags because I wasn't going to carry 150 bags with me. I thought, you know what, instead what I'm going to do is everybody I meet, as I'm standing there, I'm just going to email you. And I'm going to write, hi, really nice to meet you. I'm the British woman, I'm the British lady who does integrated education. Looking forward to hearing from you, Nick. I now have them all in my email, right? It's just I don't need a business card. I stand there with my iPad and I can just do it there or then, or even better, I hand them my iPad and say, write me your email address, and I'll CC myself so we're all in this loop. We also sat around and we did, have you done you done any of the ROI, like the, what's it called, open space, right? Okay, so you know, they're in open space, you're sitting around in a group like this with 15 people talking about milk chocolate or dark chocolate. You are if you're in my group, because that's my chosen subject. It's great, by the way, it's great. Like, forget the, you know, what's facing, you know, Israeli politics. Like, come up with something like Pepsi Cola versus Coca-Cola, because I guarantee everybody will talk about it. It was very fun. And we did talk a bit about Jewish education, but actually we talked about chocolate quite a lot. And there and then I just basically passed. I said, look, you know what, let's not do their business cards. It's not worth it. I don't even have any with me because I forgot them at the office. I passed around my iPad. Everybody wrote their email addresses. There we go, I've got a loop. And they're all people. We all talked about Jewish education, so they're all interested in Jewish education. Boom, I've done it, right? I've got them. Yeah.
You did the dark chocolate and
milk chocolate
this week in the WCJ.
Yeah.
But then you get people that may be not interested in your specific venture or whatever.
Okay, yeah. But you know what? You're right. And in fact, what we did was it was a bit of a cheat because we started. I ended up tapping on the milk chocolate and the dark chocolate, right? It's about engaging the conversation. Okay, open space is really about, it's an icebreaker, okay? It's a glorified icebreaker. It's about getting over the barrier of having something to talk about, right? It's very, once you've done that, you'll find what people are doing. Yeah, you know what, you might have a conversation that's not completely relevant to you, but you'll find very quickly, you'll sift through the group of people who is or isn't interested and who is or isn't worthwhile maintaining. So in terms of your follow-up, if it's a random, if it's a regular one, you need to be selective, right? You're gonna, I don't know, say at launch night or when you go to a conference or you go to something, you know, you're gonna have, I don't know, over the space of 2 or 3 days, you might meet 100 people. 10% are gonna be genuinely really useful, maybe, you know, or genuinely gonna really help you. I also, like, I still have, you know, I don't have a newsletter because it's not really relevant to me. What I do is I send out a pre-hug like learning postcard. So I combine a piece of artwork, a piece of biblical text, and I send it out as a like points to ponder, right? It's a so I do one before Rosh Hashanah, I do one before Pesach, I do one at various different times of the year. I'll be doing one because our academic year is still on, so I'll do it, you know, at like an end of the year, you know, new beginnings, new endings, kind of points to ponder in a couple of weeks' time. It's a great way of tapping into, you know, my mailing list. And I send out like little things, so I send out, you know, for me I'm selling a product. So the other way I follow up with people is if I know they're really genuinely interested, if I send them a thing and say, you know what, if you reply to me by the end of the month and book a program with me or want to engage in a conversation with me about something that I'm offer, I will give you 10%. Here's a discount code. You know, I'll give you 10%. And that, you know, that's a great way. People are going to self-sift. If people are genuinely interested in what you're going to do, then they're going to respond. Because if they want to purchase something you've got, or they want to engage in your venture or your program, or they want to be part of it, then they're going to be incentivized by what you're offering them. Any other questions? What do you want to know, David?
So 2 things. One is like just simple, yeah, isn't it? Is your company a CIC?
No, it's not a CIC. Does everybody know what a CIC is?
I don't think
No.
Okay.
I don't know.
So I'll tell you what happens. The way it works in the UK, I know it's different from Israel. I will do it briefly because it's not relevant to a lot of people. But in the UK, we have a multi-structure for non-profit businesses. One of which is a social enterprise, of which I'm one, because I'm one of one, right? I'm one person running this business. What a social enterprise, what the incentive of a social enterprise is that I don't have shareholders, I don't have stakeholders, I don't have a board, but I also, nobody can buy, at the moment, buy shares in my business. CICs, which is a community interest company, enables people ultimately to purchase shares in a non-profit business. And the reason why I didn't do that is because I'm too small at the moment to be a CIC. At a point where I think it's going to, for example, I'm going to end up franchising, which is probably the business model that I will go for because there's me. I can't be in 15 places at once. I can't work at 15 schools at once. So at some point, what my next scale, like I'm sort of stage 1.5 of my business development. Stage 2 to 2.5 will be that I start to create teacher institutes where I train individual people, teachers, educators, to be able to deliver the material that I have created. So that I don't have to be the person delivering, but they will be ratified, they will be basically be ratified, and if they want to take it on board, they will become essentially a shareholder, at which point I will change probably my legal status to a CIC because they will become a shareholder in the business. And they will be able to, or a stakeholder in the business, so they'll be able to, the way it will work is they will franchise. So if they go out and teach, they will take a cut and I will take the cut of what they bring in, the business that they bring in, so that I'm able to market it on a multi-level strategy, because at the moment I can only be in one place at once. So that's what CIC is. And then obviously you have, either side of that, you have charities with a board of trustees, or you have, a profit-making business with shareholders.
And who's
Yes.
your stakeholder?
At the moment I have no stakeholders. It's me. I'm the only person in the company. I have an intern who comes 1 day a week to do my admin. So this week he's currently, his role ranges from doing my accounts and spreadsheets, of which put me in front of a group of 48-year-olds and I don't panic. Put me in front of a spreadsheet with all numbers and I kind of go pale and feel sick, so he does all my accounts. But he's also collecting shoebox lids for me because I'm doing a weaving activity in a museum on Sunday. So it's kind of really random. He gets to do really random stuff. Yes?
So I'm working on a very similar, a venture that seems very aligned, and one of the questions that I'm trying to figure out is how to talk to people who aren't self-sifting, who maybe they're not, originally they're not in your exact target market, but you want to convince them that that you would be relevant to them and that their life or their experience would be enhanced by what you're providing.
What are you doing?
I'm creating a website and workshops to provide creative project-based learning to non-affiliated individuals and families
Okay.
in America.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Jessie. Yeah.
And it's all online. So the idea being that it's not geographically specific.
And with the option to provide in-person workshops if desired.
Okay.
Or maybe the workshop and then.
So how do you deal with people who self-sift? I think the thing is that, and this is something that you can work out if people are interested in what you're doing, mostly because the best question to ask them is to, instead of you telling them what you do, you ask them, you hook them in with something. So for example, with the bag example, the first thing I said to them was, how do you integrate learning in your classroom? Okay. Once they told me, they might say, oh, well, we integrate fully. Nobody, very, very few schools do. But by asking them the question, you can work out what they're interested in, and then you're going to change your pitch based on what they're doing. So if you were to go to an organisation, that deals with unaffiliated people, right, unaffiliated Jews, and maybe, I don't know, does an event twice a year or whatever, your question would be, how do you engage your unaffiliated population? Right? That's going to sift you and work out what they're doing, and then you're going to say, well, have you thought about this? This is what I'm doing. So, that's the way to hook people, is to get them to answer the question. Get them to answer your problem. If they're not dealing with your problem, then you are the solution. It's very obvious. By me saying to them, have you had the guy, I can't remember his name, who does the Tylenol vitamin talk? Do you have any idea? No, okay, you haven't had it yet. Okay, he might not come. I'll give you very quickly the analogy. Very, very quickly the analogy. You have a headache, right? Really bad headache. You cannot do anything because your head is killing you. Do you take a Tylenol or an Acamol or a paracetamol, or do you take a vitamin, right? I had loads of people saying to me, you know what, your problem is a vitamin. It's not solving, it's not going to change the face, it's not going to do anything, you're not going to make revolutionary changes. You know what? evidently, I didn't realise, but people really see this as a problem. They really see the fact that they want kids and they want families to have the connection between their regular life and their Jewish life, and they don't really, there aren't the opportunities to do it. And so from thinking that I was a vitamin, I've somehow become a paracetamol, and I'm really busy and I'm thriving. So that was the analogy that, I can't remember his name. I remember he's from Maryland University. Really useful pieces of information for you. But it was a great analogy. So that's how you can work out, are people troubled by stuff, ask them the question, and then come back with what, you're going to be the answer for them. Yeah, you had a question.
Yes. You said before that your logo was done here at present tense
Yeah.
and other design things. What kinds of things did you come with and you had to do on your own outside of present tense, and what things came out of in-house?
Aside from trying to juggle a family life and everything
well,
else.
I'm in the same boat as that.
Okay, fine. What did I come with? I came with a methodology. Okay, I came with, I've been trained to use a specific education methodology called visual thinking strategies. I came with an academic underpinning of a philosophy that I believe works with education. I came with 10 years of teaching experience because I've taught both in the UK and in the States. I came with a master's in museum studies, and I came with experience of teaching both in classrooms and in museums. Okay, so that's what I came with core knowledge and core experience. What I didn't come with was any business acumen, right? I was an educator, I was a teacher, right? You could give me the inside of a ping pong ball and I could teach it to an 11-year-old group of 30 kids, right? Without any problem. I had no idea what a budget was, I had no idea what a business plan was. I mean, I didn't need to know those things. Lesson plans, now, right? Crowd control, no problem. Assessment, great. Business stuff, nothing. Zero. Like absolutely zero. I came with no idea whatsoever. And I think that has obviously been the biggest area of my development, and being able to sell what I do and convince people that it's worthwhile and it's useful, and negotiating finances and create revenue streams and business plans. It's all up here. I haven't got that much on paper. No one's asked me for it. So, saying that, what I didn't say, the reason why David and I work in the same building was that, so I left, we left the summer that I finished, I went back into teaching knowing that I was probably going to give my notice in and leave teaching. And in the February, there was the opportunity of applying for residency at the London J-Hub, the British J-Hub, which is the Jewish hub for social action and innovation in London. And I knew that it was going to be the best place for me to be. Interestingly enough, at the same time, a really amazing job came up. And I applied for both. And I thought, you know what? Whatever the pathway is the pathway that I'm going to choose. The amazing job was to be the head of education at the Jewish Museum. And I thought, you know what? I could do both jobs. I could either go solo, and I could do my own business, and I had a really great conversation with Ariel, who was amazing. And I have, through PT, I met the only person I know in the world so far who's doing anything similar is based in Chicago. And I had a conversation with her as well. She does it in Chicago and in New York. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to apply for both and I'm going to see what happens. And in the end, I got the J-Hub residency. And so now I'm part of the J-Hub community, which has been unbelievably beneficial for me. I owe a lot to this and I owe a lot to that because I'm giving. But I had no business experience whatsoever. Yeah.
Do you develop an e-learning platform, electronic?
Yes, a bit. But I don't do it on my own. So I work for as well as running my own stuff, a lot of subcontracting. So I have a lot of organisations, they come to me and say, we need you to produce X, or we would like, I had a very big, our main communal body in England is called the United Synagogue. It's like the broadest membership base in England. And they do have quite a large budget, and they work in mostly Sunday schools, and they do have some elementary schools and secondary schools affiliated with them. And they came to me, they found my name, I found out who the key players were in England in education, who are kind of like, you know, tapping in. I did a lot of Limerids, going to Limerick conferences and stuff like that. And I also tried to find out. One of the other things I didn't say was, I decided that I would love to find out where I sat in terms of funding for groups. So I did go. I got an appointment to meet with a philanthropic funder. I came out crying. He absolutely annihilated me. It was the best thing that's ever happened to me. It really was. It was amazing. It made me really focus. I came out of there, I was like, I've got to work out my revenue stream today. I've got to work out how I'm going to make this money. And he gave me the most amazing advice. But I literally was on the phone to my husband. Oh, I can't believe what he did to me. I need coffee with lots of sugar. You know, I was literally, and I'm not that kind of person. I'm quite cool. I'm quite collected, especially when I try and present what I believe is right. He absolutely annihilated me, but it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing because I think back to that conversation. He said to me, come back to me in 6 months' time when you have made a relationship with, we have something called the Jewish Curriculum Partnership. Make an affiliation with them and let's carry on talking. I've never called him. I'm working with the JCP, the Jewish Curriculum Partnership, quite readily. I'm working with the United Synagogue quite readily, and actually I don't really need him. And that's a good position to be in. But so one of the things that one of the reasons, what I really intended to do is when I do the subcontracting, people come to me, and it's a collaboration of me deciding what I'm doing for them, and they're deciding what I can provide for them.
And but electronic education, it's another story instead of
absolutely, and it's the future.
Real, yeah. But how do you feel the content of this platform? Because the message which you would like to deliver to audience should be packed so specifically so that they catch this information, catch this message fantastic awards.
Yeah. So I do some e-learning. There's a website called Purple Mash in the UK, which is it's a provider that schools subscribe to. They do have some free online material, and that's where a lot of my interfaith work comes in. So they get in touch with me, and it's based on celebrations. So far I've done Diwali, Easter and Hanukkah, and we're going to hopefully try and do Ramadan, although we're kind of running out of time to do Ramadan, where we go into a family and we video the kid, and that's all done online. It's all uploaded online. One of my other sort of next stage development, and if anybody's involved with it, let me know, is that I want to, and it'll probably be in collaboration with Lauren, who is my counterpart in the States, who's running her own business, but we're doing very similar, is to create an augmented reality app to be used in any museum. So you would go up to, and it probably will be on ancient Egypt, you'll go up to a mummy, you'll take your iPad, your iPhone, you'll show your iPad and iPhone, and all the biblical text will come out. So you can do it anywhere in the world, and it would be the most amazing, and then you could be able to, and then the kids would be able to have activities that could then be used at your family Seder. So that's where I want to go with it. So in terms of e-learning platforms, that's where the future of e-learning is. iPads are being used more and more in schools. In fact, at one of the schools I work with, every single teacher has an iPad. And the idea is that she uses it for, he or she uses it for assessment. They use it for taking images and sort of really bringing classroom learning onto the e-learning platform.
But augmented reality is really nice.
It's really, that's what I would love. Similar with any painting. Go into an art gallery and look at any biblical narrative painting. And show it and try and come up with a way of having links to the biblical text and the commentaries and maybe alternative depictions of that story. Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about how through this organization you had more of the interfaith connection. How do you get in touch and have people from different faith-based groups have buy-in to your project?
Okay, so that's part of your environmental scan. So for me, my environmental scan composed of all the Jewish education providers, all the primary school education providers, including, you know, Viking Man, and you talked about like the pioneer, right? That for me was one of my environment. You know, all the experiential education play parts of it. Then there was the family learning. You know, what's going to make a family go to a museum on a Sunday over going to Legoland in England, right? You know, or like, you know, that's another provider. So the interfaith was one other of that. I realised that for me, the Jewish market is quite small in the UK. Right? Yes, if I'm going to stay and I'm going to develop my first base as being UK, it's what I know, it's my home, then I've got to expose myself beyond the remit of the Jewish community. So I just through J-Hub and through lots of connections, I discovered an organisation called the Three Faiths Forum, who have just opened a New York office. They're based in London, but there are other organisations who work on interfaith. I mean, for example, there's organisations that work in massive organisations. Two of the organisations, the people I visited yesterday, Migdal David and Israel Museum, is really working at the forefront of collaborative learning of different groups in Israel, right? They're working with Muslims and Jews together on collaborative art projects, right? That's interfaith. So I discovered that, you know, I went to them yesterday specifically to talk about interfaith. So I did that environmental scan. I found them. I got back to England. I made sure that they knew me, I knew them. I made all those meetings. I set up, I mean, I was just meeting people. So at the time I was teaching, I think, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I was with my kids on Mondays and Fridays, and Thursday I was basically working on Look to Learn one day a week, and then in the evenings. And my Thursdays would be packed from the morning to the evening. You know, I did a full day, and it was all meetings. It was all meetings about, you know, and I you know, had a list of all the people, and I got people to introduce me to other people. So that's how I did it. It was like really seeing where I needed to be and who I needed to talk to and who I needed to address what I mean, my work has changed as a result of meeting all these people. I hadn't thought about interfaith until it came up that it was definitely an area. So I'm doing this sort of stuff. I'm doing the integration with interfaith groups at museums. That's all right. Any other questions? What else can I help you with? Any problems people are having?
Well, I had a question about, did you cold call me about it, or did you have a contact? How did you approach the head of education?
Okay, so here, I sat down and I thought, who in Israel, which museums, while I'm here, have anything like the stuff that I work at and I work with in the UK, right? I'm in Jerusalem, so the two most obvious come to mind, you know, the other one was the Bible Lands Museum. No one could give me, I wanted a name. There's no point in me cold calling and saying, can I speak to the head of education? Tali Gavish came, I mean, they both came through people through PT. Somebody came in and they're like, oh yeah, I know, you know, I'm on the board of trustees of this museum, and I know, you know, you need to call so-and-so. And I sent a mass load of emails, and I definitely emailed all the major museums here. Didn't touch Yad Vashem. I don't do Holocaust education. I'm not an expert in it. I don't want to go there. That's not what I do. But I did want to do all the major museums. And essentially I got in touch with them. I sent them a convincing email. I think I might have tapped in some photos on the bottom of the email about what I was doing. I'm in Israel for X number of weeks. I'd love to meet with you. And Tali and Tal came back and said, yeah, we'd love to talk to you. And at various occasions over the course of the year, I make sure, you know, when I send out my pre-Pesach, pre-Rosh Hashanah cards and stuff, I don't add them onto the MailChimp. You know, the people who are valuable to me, they do get a personal. Because MailChimp's very nice to send out mass emails, but there are people who are really important, who you want to maintain. They are two of my most valued contacts. Similarly, the head of education from the Royal Academy in London is a very dear friend who I met at a trade conference. So I started going, that's the other thing, is start tapping into conferences. So if you're in e-learning platforms or you're involved with, you know, those are the people you need to go to. I go to, you know, all the education shows, I go to all the museum shows as much as possible. I'm on mailing lists. You know, I've joined the group for education in museums. I'm part of Museums Association. I still have, I'm still involved. I went to the education show, and I walk around and I talk to everybody. I tell everybody what I'm doing. I look through the presenter lists. Like this conference, I had 6 people. I looked through the, I'm at a conference, and I call ahead of time to the organizer and say, I need you to send me a participant list. I need you to tell, I want to know who's coming. And I will sit down the day before and I will tap into the 6 or 7 people who I want 5 minutes with. I want 5 minutes with them, and I will grab them wherever possible. I might go to the most dull session on the planet, but I know that they're going to either be there or a session that's not relevant but they're presenting it, and I will go to that session, or I will make sure that I can see them at the end of the session.
So here's a follow-up question. It's going to sound a little strange. So this level of attention to detail and charisma and willingness to meet and greet, was that there pre-present tense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm happy to admit that I'm totally ACD about this stuff.
Okay.
As my husband said, I am an over-perfectionist. That is how I work. I did that when I was teaching as well. It's interesting. I mean, when I was teaching, I could teach the kids, that was no problem. The people I wanted on board to be on my side was the parents, right? And if you think about it, they are my customers. Today they're still my customers. The teachers are my customers. The kids are the beneficiaries. But the teachers are my customers. They're the people you need to schmooze. They're the people you want to take out for coffee. By the way, my Starbucks card is on my business account. My Starbucks card comes off of my business account, because that's what I use it for. I've drunk so much coffee in 2 years. So much coffee.
You're not reading at a bar or something like that.
Yeah. That doesn't really happen. Education. Lots of
really
people
go down
bed
that
by,
Could you maybe talk about your experience with launch night and
Yeah.
your transition afterwards, what practically you did, your next steps? Moved on a little.
Absolutely. I had a break, which was really important. I take the summer off. I shut down over the summer, but I think it's also really important to have a couple of weeks where you literally shut down. I've become really ruthless about emailing. I will not email at 10 o'clock at night, because if you do that, people expect you, and that is the precedent you set. Some people won't agree with me, but my feelings are that my working day ends at 6 o'clock. If I'm with my kids and I've given up 2 hours of my day, then I'll happily give back those 2 hours of the day. But I gave myself a break. I gave myself some thinking space. I gave myself some family time. And then when I got back into, I went back to school, obviously, because I went back to teaching in the September. I threw myself back into it because I was like, I can only make a decision if I give both of my sides of work 100%, right? It was a really hard couple of months. I threw myself into both my job as teacher and into Look to Learn. So I thought, if I'm going to make this go, I'm going to work out which one becomes dull, right? Which one doesn't motivate. Mm-hmm. And the thing about launch night was I was so geared up to be able to pitch it and work out what I was going to do that when I then went back into the real life world, what was it that kept me going? What kept that adrenaline that you work up to while you're doing this? What kept me going? What was it that I wanted to continue to do? And I wanted to go home. I wanted to meet the people in my community who were doing stuff. I wanted to get in touch with the education. It was very, very obvious, very quickly, what I wanted to do. And then I worked out where I needed to be to position myself. So I realised that I needed to, I could have worked at home. I don't think I would have made the progress that I've made had I not have decided to apply for residency at the J-Hub, which is interesting enough, I said I don't take grant funding. It's a philanthropically funded space. So essentially I am a benefactor. I'm benefiting from having rent-free office space and a phone line and computer and a community, an innovative community of people who've gone through the same sort of trials and tribulations and decisions, and a network, and professional development opportunities 3-4 times a year. and opportunities to come to conferences like I came to this, and I went to, actually, as a result of being at President, I met with the JDC. There was a group that came from the FSU that came to listen to the pitches and stuff, also people in innovation who came from JDC, FSU, and I spoke to them, and as a result I ended up going in the October of that year to Moscow to present. So I had that already set up. I also decided, like for example, that December I was like, I'm going to Limud. I'm going to Limud conference in England, right? I need to be there. I need to present. And I need to pitch what I'm going to present. I need to choose who I'm going to present to, and I'm going to do that. So I had those things set up. Like, what am I going to do? Not next week. What am I doing in 2 months' time? When the dust has settled a bit and I'm back to normal life, where am I going to be? Because that's really realistic, right? It's not about, because you're going to come back with like uber like energy. Oh, you know, I've got this, and this. What happens when it all calms down? 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line, you know? And it was 3 months down the line, I made the decision to pack in teaching, to give it up. Because the dust had settled and I realised what I wanted to do. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
If we talk about electronic learning platforms, so if it will be the long text,
yeah,
it is difficult to catch the information. How to organize it? Just as schemas, or maybe bullets, or what are the useful instruments? And
I think that's really about, also that links back to environmental scan, right? Who are your market? Who are you dealing with? When I deal with kids, I use one line. I will use one sentence, right? I'm using adults. I might use 5 sentences. It depends on their level. It depends on who I'm pitching to. So, you know, if I'm using an e-platform, if I'm using e-learning, and I do a lot on my iPad, I will only ever bring in what is relevant to the people I'm using, you know, and I'm working towards that. And that's about, you know, that is about your market, your environmental stuff. Who are you working with? Who are your market proposition? Who are the people who are, yeah.
Very wide.
Right, but then it might be that you start to decide to filter it. Because, you know, I now have 3 groups that I work with, but I tweak what I do for them. So for example, the one area of my platform, the museum tours, are run for 3 market propositions. But I run the same programs for them. One is schools, one is families, and the other one is adults. But actually, the content is very, very similar. It's just the delivery that changes. But, you know, at the end of the day, my market proposition, the people who are benefiting, who are getting out of it, are all learning. But they could be, you know, I could have kids who are at the same Jewish understanding or art, and like my program's going to change massively if I do it for museum professionals over doing it for biblical scholars, you know. So that's what I have to consider when I do it. I think you have to be quite specific who your target audience is, because I think it becomes very, very difficult to be able to market and to pitch if you've got lots and lots of people at stake. Lots of people at stake. Anything else? Yes.
When did you hand in notice?
So teaching is one of those crazy professions in England where you have to give like 2.5 months notice. So I gave my notice in at December with the plan that I was going to leave in February. I might have given it in February that I was going to leave at Pesach. So I gave my notice. I'd made a decision. I actually had a conversation with the head teacher of the school in December, and I said, I'm going to give you a heads up. I think that was I think that's also a reasonable thing to do. If you're in jobs at the moment, you know, or you're doing something and you know that you want to make a go of this and really give it your all and take the risk, it's only fair to say, my head is still 100%. I said to her, I remember at the time, I said, look, I will give this 100%, but you need to know that I'm not going to be here I don't see myself I don't want to be here at the end of the academic year. I want to be doing it. And I was really, really very blunt. And in fact, it was kind of strange because the head teacher changed. So my old head teacher left in the December. She gave me the 6 weeks off. And when I asked for the unpaid leave, because I took unpaid leave, I told her there and then, I said, look, you know that I'm doing this. This is really what I want. Please will you give me unpaid leave to do this fellowship? And I told her all about present tense. So she knew when I came back that I had other plans. It was kind of obvious when I came back. But I still work with them, and I was actually with them last week. Anything else?
So in terms of launch night, and when did you made the tote bags? Launch night?
No, I didn't.
Launch night.
No, I did those afterwards. I did the June after, so basically an entire year. This time last year, there was this big Jewish education conference. There's never been a conference like it. What they did was they basically brought all the Judaic studies teachers from all over the country who teach elementary in the UK together for a day. It was like, hello, there's my audience, the whole lot in one building in one day. I was like, I've got to make an impact. Do you know what? That was my launch night. I think I did my elevator pitch 200 times. I was so knackered. They gave me a stall. I think I stood behind it for about 10 minutes and I just walked around with the bags. That was my launch night. Because I at that point, I was like, right, I'd been out of teaching for about a month and a half. I was part of the J-Hub, I had the bags, and there was my audience, and I took it. But I did make a mistake. Teachers don't carry business cards.
Yeah.
So I gave them what I should have done, and this is the other way of doing it, is I should have said, have 5 minutes of I want to pitch you, I will give you, and it didn't click until about 2 hours into the conference, I'll give you a bag if you give me your email address.
Yeah.
That's what I should have said.
I teach Jewish studies at high school. I've never had a business card.
Right, you don't have them, right? But that's what I should have done. And in retrospect, I definitely, it's taken me longer to acquire those teachers' numbers. I've now got those email addresses and phone numbers and stuff, because teachers still work with phone numbers. You still have to badger them and phone them and stuff. But it's taken me longer to acquire them. That's what I should have done. That was. But at launch night, I had a massive. I remember I had a big picture. I can probably show you. I've got a picture of me at launch night with what my table looked like, which is actually probably really useful, right? So while I'm talking, I'm going to find you the picture and I'll put it on the screen because it'd be really useful for you to see. So you have a table. It's basically that big, right? That's as big as you have. Okay, so a couple of things that I'm going to give you all the tricks to take. Tablecloth or a piece of fabric, right? I got people who lived in Israel, I had a piece of fabric to cover the table so it looked nice. I got a box and put this picture on the front of the box. Okay, I'm a primary school teacher, right? That's what I did. So bulletin boards and display boards I can do without any problem, right? You are basically, imagine what you need to think about, and this was something that nobody said to me, is your table is your shop window, right? You might not stand behind it, you might stand by the side of it, but it's your shop window. So what is it going to sell when people are mingling around on launch night? What's going to draw the attention to your stand? What's going to make them come and talk to you, right? Or you do what I did at the conference a year later, you don't stand by your table and you walk around. You could walk around with people. And that was also quite a useful thing to do. But yeah, I had this box with the one of the images that I use. I went to an art and craft shop and I made. You saw the hands. They're like. Show you what it looks like.
So while you're finding the picture, how long did it take you to plan it? Where did you go? How did you do it?
I spent a couple of days doing it. I had by that point I had my logo. So I created my what's that page called? See, I don't even use it anymore. there's like this, it's like a business plan, I can't remember what it's called, you're supposed to give out to people, it's supposed to be on your table, which...
Design for it?
Summary.
Yeah, it's like your summary, it's your outline, it's your business
Design for it
outline. No, I'll find it. It's in my present tense folder in my my Dropbox. I'll find it for you in a minute. So I did that, and I had my business cards and my logo, and I had a big logo, and I had a tagline already. And then I had like examples of that, which is this this artwork, which is this hand made out of plaster of Paris. I went to an art and craft shop and I basically made a couple of them and I had them on my table so that people would come and go, oh, what's that about? And it would be a conversation. I had food. I made cookies. I made like 150 cookies and had them on my table. Why? Well, people came to have cookies, so I had a conversation with them. You know, it was a bit bonkers that I baked the night before lunch.
We can serve drinks.
Yeah, you could take exactly. When I then did this conference and I had a stand, I went and bought sweets. I didn't have because I went and bought I had a big bowl of sweets. Or strawberries or whatever it was. Like I definitely had. I think I had massive bowl of sweets, and I, just to, get people to your stand. What can bring them? The cookies worked. I went home with no cookies. Yeah.
I have a comment and a question, if it's all right.
Sure.
Just to reinforce your good strategy, one of the producers that gave me some of the best advice in film was a guy who started out like me as a production assistant and worked his way up, bringing donuts to every job he went to, and he became known as Donut Dave. And the next thing you know, he jumped ahead of everybody, and he was like he was an assistant director, I think, and ended up being an executive producer.
Yeah.
So, I have a similar challenge to the one that you described, which is that I have plenty of experience in performance arts and theater, and I worked for the past half year on some of the best gigs in town in production. But I have no business experience at all. And now I'm in one of the most challenging parts of my project is our script is basically being fought over two people, like a producer and an aspiring producer, I guess, who like each other advantages and disadvantages, and they're like butting heads and talking smack about each other and like don't want to cooperate and which is all well and good for somebody who's 40 and they have enough money to do whatever they want, but this is my first project and I'm trying to like schmooze them over. Yeah. So, what do you do in this like unknown territory? Obviously I take the approach of a student, right? I tell them every email opens with, thanks again for all your great advice, even if they haven't given me advice, but
right.
But yeah, you don't want them to get exhausted and to ditch your project, but at the same time, it has to move forward, right? They have to stop fighting each other.
Yeah, I think, look, for your situation, it's also about what's going to make it, like, you've got two people who are interested, right? Is that, am I right?
Yeah.
So it's about...
Two people calling themselves the producer, yeah.
Okay. Is there any way they could collaborate?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping, but the issue is that they don't agree on anything, and so it may come down to a point where we have to say no to the daunting thought, right? But the risk being what if you make the wrong call, right? You can't go back on that.
Yeah, but you know what, you learn from mistakes. Look at like the grilling that I got with the funder, right? It was probably the biggest lesson I've ever learned. Absolutely, he shook me to my core. But yeah, it was the best thing he ever did. I look back at it and it was like a total turning point for me. In fact, I think I was still teaching. It was a total turning point for me. You have to, this is a risk business, right? Here I am doing a business in education at a time where the UK economy is going belly up, and I'm thriving. It doesn't really, I've got all the odds against me. No one pays for education. There's no money in education. It's state funded in the UK. Religious education is state funded in the UK, and I'm still getting people turning around left, right, and centre and looking, asking for me. And what happens when that stops? Well, then I make a decision when that stops. But the work keeps coming. I just think you've got to realise that there's going to be risks, and you're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes are going to be the best things that ever happen to you. They're going to be really tough, and they're going to be really hard at that moment. you know, but you just got to live through it and you've got to learn from it. And that is what business is about. I mean, you think about all the people who are really successful in business, they've all made massive mistakes. That's why they're so good at it. Does that?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a bit contrived, but that's completely the truth, you know. I mean, they've all somewhere or another made, you know, complete mess ups.
And a lot of noise.
That's all I do. Anyone else? Yeah.
How to find a donor for
How to find a donor? It might take time. You've got to work out who's relevant. So, for example, there are donors who don't okay. I'll give you my. I almost didn't come to Present Tense, right? I almost didn't come to Present Tense because they couldn't find me a sponsor. Why? Because I was English. No joke. Totally true, right? I was English. They'd had two people before who'd come from who were English but who were made aliyahs. That was easy because they were essentially Israelis, right? They couldn't find a sponsor for me because all the regular foundations that Present Tense used turned around and said, "But she's English. We can't do English people." Mm. So I had to basically, you know, donor, I had to essentially find, like, they then put something together and I had this, as well as like my Present Tense interview and my application, I then had to have a conversation with the head of JDC Europe to essentially sell myself, to convince him to pay for me to come to Present Tense. You know, so I think the thing about funders is it's got to be your niche, right? There are going to be donors and funders out there who are only going to be interested in that.
But how to get to know?
Asking.
There are a lot of different foundations.
Right. So you're, for example, you need to know for St. Petersburg, you're going to need to probably speak to JDC. You might want to speak to the JCC. You might want to speak to any. You need to speak to all the people you can, and you just ask them. You say, like, who would, you know, do you know somebody who'd be interested in funding this? Mm-hmm. Is this something that is going to be interested in, you know, like, you just have, you kind of, you know, you said about, like, learning skills. I think I've learned to have a little bit of chutzpah. You know what I mean? Like, I think you just have to, right? Like, what's the worst thing I can do? They're going to turn around and say no. Like, you know.
Have you had any success raising money through crowdsourcing?
Apart from people finding money to pay for me to do stuff. So yes and no. No one can write me a check, right? They can write an organisation a check,
Why?
Because I'm not a charity.
I don't think you need to be a charity.
So yeah, in the UK, you can't take grant. I can't take grant money.
It's not grant money. It's through like Indiegogo or Kickstarter. It's international. You don't.
Yeah.
Try Indiegogo.
Okay. I mean, I'll give you an example. So there's two projects that one I've done and one that I'm going to do. Actually, there's one I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a school in Glasgow who have £30,000 grant that has been put in an account and has sat there dormant for the last 5 years. Right? They are about to celebrate their 50th anniversary. Mm-hmm. And they have learned that this money is now going to be available to them over the course of the next X number of years. And the head teacher turned around to me and she said to me, "I want you to write me a proposal worth £8,000.
Nice. Mm.
She's like, "I want you to be the beneficiary of that money this year. You need to go away
Like
and
the
you
children.
Yeah, but
amazing.
Right? So, but she was the person who said to me, "There's X amount. The only way I can tap into this money is I need to convince them that we want this money, and I want you to be the person to convince them." I mean, that's kind of scary. Like, I've got to go home and write this proposal. She wants it, you know, by the end. She wants it like very soon. So that's what I'm going to be doing on the plane tonight. Is writing a proposal and sorting out my worksheets for Sunday. It's good news. I don't have kids on the plane, so I can work. Anything else? What else can I? How else can I? Yeah.
Figured I'd ask. You were saying lots of teachers are using iPads in teaching now.
Yeah.
If you could write an app,
yes,
that every teacher would be like, oh yeah, I want that? What would it be?
Oh God, what would it be? I think probably something to do with planning and assessment. Yeah, definitely. Something to do with planning and assessment.
Yeah.
Because I think it could be used anywhere in the world. Every teacher has to plan, every teacher has to assess. So, and it would, you know, whether or not it would be like, I mean, I don't know what it would do, but I think a teacher planning and assessment, there probably are them, but I think a really user-friendly one that you could, you know, that you could, for example, record the kids speaking, and you could like have the work available, so you could basically track everything, like all in a nutshell. But yeah, I think teacher. It's very boring. But yeah, planning and assessment, because it's dull, but it has to be done.
And it's not done well.
Pardon?
And it's never done well.
It's not done. I mean, it's yeah. Anything else? The other thing that comes up is that you come up with ideas all the time. So like, okay, the idea I came up with, you can nick it, was that I have a friend who I'm staying with, she's a mum. They made Aliyah, she didn't do Ulpan, right? Her kids speak better Hebrew than she does, and every week she gets a newsletter from the teachers in Ivrit. And she has to sit there on a Friday night with during Shabbat, like once her kids are in bed, with a dictionary working out what the hell is being said. And I said to her, I thought to myself, you know what? There's got to be, it's a brilliant idea, a mummy ulpan, right? A mummy ulpan that takes place during school hours, right? You drop your kids off, it could even be in the same building, and all it teaches you to start off with to get your Ivrit off the ground of what you need is all the vocabulary to do with parenting, right? You know, you could have 1 week which is all about medical stuff, going to the doctors, one whole bits to do with school, all the school assessments, how you do your parent conferences, and it would just be for it would be for non-working mums who are at home. So that was like one idea I came up with. The other idea I've come up with is a granny nanny, right? A granny nanny is a woman who probably lives. I've got a lot of friends, and I know, especially I've got a lot of friends in the States who don't live near their parents, right? And they have kids, and their kids miss out of having their grandparent nearby, and the grandparent misses out of not having their grandchildren nearby. But the friends as well also have no childcare at the touch of a button, right? Somebody who's not going to go out in the middle of the week, right? Because they're older generation. They might go out on a weekend, but they're around, right? They have time. Okay, so instead of having a nanny who's in her 20s or late teens, early 20s, and you have a granny nanny, right? Somebody who gets to have essentially pseudo grandchildren. She builds a relationship up with another group of kids, or she doesn't even have grandchildren, and she earns a bit of money, and she gets to kind of have that grandparent connection, and the kids get to have somebody who's older and mature and kind of thing. That was the other idea I came up with. I mean, neither of them I've done anything about, but that's what this does. This generates these mad ideas that come up every now and then. The other one is called the Oops shop. The Oops shop is at the airport, and
everything you forgot.
Yeah. So it has underwear, it has toiletries. Underwear is a great one. Kids' clothes, like you've realised you've got no socks for your kids.
Pharmacy there.
Right. It's called the Oops shop, right? Every airport needs one. Right? It's not overpriced. Right? What was that? There was one other I came up with recently. Oh, the other one, and my friend swears that I should do it, is a jar that's got all the dry ingredients for cakes and biscuit and cookies and stuff. Really nicely packaged, and it's gifts that you give to people, and it's got like all your favourite recipes. So it's like all your favourite family recipes and stuff, and you get people to send in recipes, and you sell them, and you sell the jars, and they're really the jars are really cheap and material. This is what happens. This is what President does to you, and then you decide that you're just going to keep going with one that's probably probably not going to make millions instead of the jar with all the cookies or the oops shop, which probably would, but you know what, I believe in Jewish education. I hope that's been helpful, yeah.
And just one question.
Yeah, pleasure.
If I'm not mistaken, you mentioned about a newsletter, that you have some mailing list and you feed some newsletters. So every week or how often?
I do mine. There are people who do like a monthly newsletter.
To hold them in a sustainable relationship.
I don't do that because I don't have the time to do that, and I think that teachers don't have the time to read it. So what I do is I give them a resource. So I send them a mini lesson. That mini lesson, let me show you one, because the easiest way for me to show you this stuff is to show you what I've done.
Useful information.
Yeah, I send them, where is it? It's under promotional materials. I'll show you what it looks like, because then you get an idea. Bear with me. Because I think it's worth you seeing. Here we go, Rosh Hashanah. Oh, it's not going to like. Oh, it's come off the internet. Excellent. Put it up onto the internet and I can show it to you. So yeah, so like for me, it's much better to send a lesson to the teachers because that's what is going to be useful to them, right? A newsletter is not going to be useful to them. They're probably not going to read it. I sent out this Rosh Hashanah one. And I had the head of education from the Jewish Museum. I know I need to finish because you've got like the next thing. 972. What's it? 561 7196. Sure. Come up. See, yes, excellent. Okay, let me show you what it looked like. Oh, come on, internet,
It's a problem we have here.
Oh, really?
It takes a little while.
Oh, does it? Okay, fine. All right. Well, it's slowly the little cogs. Where was I? Oh, I was working with a group of kids and I told them about the hamster wheels. I said, you know, when you like try and get the, the internet's all powered by the hamster wheels and these little hamsters running on these little lemons.
That can traumatize kids.
No, it was really fun. They laughed. They thought it was hysterical. It was fun. They were 11-year-olds.
Okay.
They knew that I was just joking.
Oh, okay.
But it was really funny.
Someone once told me that lasagna had fish eggs, and I never ate lasagna for like years.
I once convinced somebody that mussolini was an Italian pasta dish. So I once convinced somebody that mussolini was an Italian pasta dish.
It could be.
Yeah, that's so far-fetched.
That's very funny.
I've got one with a little meat on it.
Okay, I want to just show you. This is what I send out. Of course, this is all going to be like wrongly positioned.
Not too bad.
Not right, not so bad. Come on, no signal. No signal. Let's turn it off and turn it on. Oh, why did that work just before? No idea.
Maybe turn on all the...
God. Can you see that? Like killing the table. Okay. Okay, so this is what it was. It was an email, right? This is what I put on this onto a MailChimp. I think actually I didn't even use MailChimp at the time. That's what the front of it looked like. That was what the back of it looked like. So imagine yourself at the football stadium surrounded by the sounds of the Vuvuzela. What can you hear? How does the sound make you feel? Right? It was a lesson. That's what I sent them. I sent them a mini lesson. Anybody could print it out. It was useful. It wasn't just, it didn't actually say anything. It didn't tell you about what is available to me, but I got loads of response. And based on that response, I then sent people, oh, this is my new program outline. So I will do exactly the same for this Rosh Hashanah. I did one for Pesach as well, and I've done a couple of them. And I've got really good responses from them. You know, people have really sort of said thank you. Thank you for...
Thank you.
I'm just standing up.
Oh, okay. I tell you what's been really fun. So I'm still into contact with a lot of my my PT fellows, and I've been to Aharon twice since I've been here. But I went out with have you met Marla? Has Marla come in? She'll probably come in as well. She was one of my fellows, and she's doing really, really well, so she'll probably come and talk to you. So I went out with her and we're sitting in Sushi Machavia on Emek, and then another fellow came round, like literally sat next to us, and I'm like, Micha! And it's you know, I'm still in contact with quite a lot of people. So it's been really nice, and we kind of, you know, we've got Facebook status each other.
Did you contact with a mentor, and how was it?
My mentor was okay. My coach was amazing. She was really great. She was really, really useful. My mentor was good. For me, he didn't understand British education. So he was really good. He was a former high school head teacher. He'd been living in Israel. He was from Canada. He was really great, and he did help me think about my business structure. But because he was kind of an old school teacher, he was like, oh, well, I think you need to make a pack, and you're going to send it out to the school. I'm like, I'm not making packs. No one uses education packs. They either download them on the internet so that they can be upgraded, or it's going to be e-learning, or, you know, there is something still to be said about teaching face-to-face, because that actually still has massive value. I mean, you know, why I could make my entire program as a downloadable, that I could forget the personal tours, but I actually think that there's still something really valuable in a museum setting to have somebody actually show you around stuff. So he was good, but I found that was the other thing, is when you go back, you know, Emily, yeah, you know, you said about what to do when you go back. Find yourself a mentor. One of the most important things I did. Ask around somebody who is in your field of work, your genre of field of work, right? So for you, arts, find somebody in the arts, find somebody in travelling something, travelling theatre, travelling people, you know, somebody who does festivals, like the arts festivals, right? You need to find yourself somebody in the field at the middle to top ends who will mentor you. So I found somebody who happened to write a PhD in arts education, like arts education and Judaism, and is working in the community in education. And she is my mentor, and we meet once a month. Really vital. In your area, find somebody in your area that you can meet once a month. I mean, yes, you could Skype call them, but I would find somebody that you can actually sit down and take them out for lunch. And I also have their head of education from a major museum. So I really have two mentors. I have one in education and one in museums. So you would probably want one who's about like geographical, like the logistics, right? Yeah. How do you do the logistics? And somebody in the arts. Okay. So I would definitely, everybody, find yourself a mentor.
Perfect.
Amazing.
In Jerusalem, she's an artist and she's been on tour. She's like both.
But has she been doing it for? You want somebody who's really
she's been on Broadway. She's toured America.
Okay.
She's an artist herself, and she's done the logistics.
Emily, are you based in Jerusalem?
No.
Okay. So I would say you want somebody in Tel Aviv. You want somebody who's really easy.
She could take the bus to Jerusalem.
Yeah, but that's too much. That's too. Forget it. You want somebody who you can meet for coffee at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning once a month. Okay, I'm going to leave you to your next thing. I can hang around for a little bit. I actually have some work to do. So.